I'm with Chris Difford and Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze. Hello, Chris.
Hello, I'm the one with the deep voice here on the other side of the channel from Glenn.
Hello, Glenn.
Hello, I'm over here.
Chris and Glenn, let's first talk about the history of the band and the origins. Who was it that originally thought they'd like to be in a band first, and how did that start?
I think it must have been Chris, Chris was the first member of Squeeze to actually be in a band. In fact, he put an advert in a local shop window where I lived at the time in Blackheath, advertising for a guitarist for a band that was on the verge of recording and touring. And I think I was 14 at the time, and that really appealed to me. So I answered the advert and found out that there was no band and they weren't on the verge of recording. But me and Chris got on pretty well together. That was about the middle of '73. So that was the time that we first got into a band together.
And I think our first show was at a local pub, funnily enough.
We were always playing, we always seemed to be playing R&B based songs. I think at that time a lot of bands that got together, especially younger bands, started out playing rhythm and blues type songs, because I think that everyone, regardless of what time they're growing up, can go through a stage of discovering rock and roll and its excitement. Even though the records were made like 20 years ago, they still retain the initial excitement of first hearing them. It did for me, and I first heard them about 73, 74.
Do you ever see yourselves as part of that new wave or punk movement?
I think we were part of it more than anything else that had been along before, and it certainly gave the band an input of energy, extra energy, that hadn't been around before, because around about 75, 76, when we first started gigging regularly, we were playing college dates, supporting Climax Blues Band and Renaissance. And those sort of bands really weren't attracting our sort of audience, because even then we were playing 3-minute songs, and the audiences then weren't interested. Whereas with the event of the new wave thing, it helped audiences get, I think, a lot more interested in shorter structured songs and more exciting stage presentation, which is where we fitted in.
How did your writing partnership develop?
I think the first time we ever wrote a song together was on the way to Devon in a van, and Glenn said, "Why don't you give me one of those lyrics that you're writing? I'll see if I can put a tune to it." And I did just that, and haven't stopped since.
And is that always that way around, that you supply words and music come later?
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes what happens is that I'll write a tune for a lyric, and Chris will decide that the tune suggests something else to him, so he'll rewrite another lyric. But initially, the lyrics always come first.
What about songs like that, Up the Junction and Labeled with Love, that have very definite biographical feel about them? Are these people that you actually know and have written songs because of their experience?
No, Up the Junction was, I don't know the characters in it. Only, I can place them in my imagination, but I can't place them in the street. I suppose they are in the street, but I don't know where. And the same goes for Labeled with Love. Not very often I like writing about things that are close to me, in case people find out about it. I don't want to write too many songs about my wife, for instance, in case she sues me for divorce. But I will.
Did it ever concern you or worry you that perhaps some of your ideas and your language wouldn't actually travel, beyond the English Channel?
No, I never worried about it. I don't think they really understood Bang Bang in the first album, but then I don't think we did, so I don't think it really mattered. We sort of scrubbed the first album off in a way. And I don't think they really particularly took much interest in Call for Cats until they saw the video. They can see things visually, but they couldn't sort of connect who the Sweeney were and so on and so forth. But I never consciously write with America in mind, or Australia, or any other part of the world, You just write to please yourselves, first of all, I think. That's what Glenn and I have found. And if you please if other people like it, then it's a bonus.
How important is coming from London to you? Do you think if you had come from Bradford, say, that the tone of your songs or texture would have been very different?
One can never tell, I think. But I know that after 6 weeks on an American tour or anywhere in in the world, it's always jolly nice to get off the old aeroplane and smell and look at London and think, God, why did I come back? Because it's sort of, when we're in the middle of the States on the touring bus, there's nothing quite like the smell of Sunday dinner and, you know, a good old Tony Hancock tape. And the thought of going down the local pub, the old tradition of being in England, and especially where we live in London. And then when you come back, you know, it's grey skies and it's a bit muggy, but it's lovable.
As a songwriter, Chris, I'm interested to find out how it is that you can be so articulate when it comes to writing songs from a woman's perspective. Songs, for example, like Vanity Fair. How can you throw yourself into that world?
I don't think there are many people that write songs with women in mind, and I sort of recognised that a couple of years ago, and decided I'd try and think about it and see if I could come up with any words for, you know, from what I would imagine a woman's point of view would be.
You talked earlier about your style of writing, where Glenn provides a melody and you put words on top of that melody. Were there any unusual circumstances to the writing of any of the tunes on this new album?
No. Black Coffee in Bed, I'll always remember. Living downstairs from Glenn came rushing down one afternoon, and as if there was a fire or a bomb had gone off or something, it's, you know, ants in his pants and all that stuff. Said I must come and listen to this tape, so I went upstairs and listened to the demo that Glenn had created of Black Coffee in Bed.
I remember particularly writing When the Hangover Strikes, referring back to having been out to clubs fairly often, you know, about a 3-month period, I think. One night I come back from a club and it was about 3 in the morning, and I got the sort of feeling, wondering why I was bothering. I could sort of hardly see straight, and I sort of sat down at a table and opened the lyric book, and there was When the Hangover Strikes, and it fitted my mood perfectly. So I got a guitar out and strummed away for a couple of minutes, and that tune more or less fell out of me, and then I think I fell asleep.
I want to talk about the band, because you've had a lot of lineup changes in the band, but particularly in the keyboard department.
Well, Julian left because he really wanted to be a star. He always had that sort of flair on stage of humour and verve, and I think it's probably, well, I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to Squeeze, in a nice way, that Julian left, because his sense of humour and his direction was channeling the band in the wrong direction at the time. And then Paul Carrack joined the group, ex of the band Ace, and he was only in the band for a year, and I don't know really what to say about Paul. I can't understand why he left the band. I think he's just a loner, you know, a bit of a gypsy, sort of drift between one band and the other.
And who's your new man?
New bloke is called Don Snow. He used to play with the Sinceros for a while, and he was also in the Vibrators at the tail end of their being together, which is something you'd rather forget, I think. And,
so we won't mention it.
So we'll bring it up here, just to remind everybody. And he's an extremely talented chap.
I think he fits in very well. He's made the arrangements of the songs and the sound of the songs a lot stronger, I think. The sound of the new album and the delivery of the album is more, it's getting more and more to sound like Squeeze, you know.
You've worked with some pretty famous people when it comes to production. Elvis Costello, Roger Bachirian. How did you come to link up with Elvis Costello?
At the time we were managed by his manager Jake Riviere, so it was Mutual Appreciation Society. We were always slapping each other on the back saying how great things were. And we'd already been in the studio with Dave Edmonds. We tried a few tracks with Dave, and we were kind of making the F-beat rounds, as it were, because we then, after working with Elvis, we went in with Nick Lowe as well. And we thought we'd have a week with Elvis and Roger to see how the chemistry would work. And it worked really, really well. It was great fun, and it was very quick.
What about your new album? Who have you got to sit behind the desk on this one?
We co-produced this one ourselves with a guy called Phil McDonald, who has been an engineer for years and years. In fact, I think he started off at EMI Studios in 1962 or something, and he was one of the guys who used to twiddle the huge knobs there. And he got to work on a few Beatles albums, and then he handled engineering on John Lennon's solo albums, the ones he recorded over here. I think Imagine and the Plastic Ono Band first album. And I really liked the sound on those albums. And we met Phil, and he was a very pleasant, easygoing guy, much along the lines of ourselves. And we decided to go in the studio with him, and it worked out really well. He's got a good sound in the studio. He's got his own sound.
Can a producer make that much difference to an album? Or to your music?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that this album, more than any other album, has got nearer to capturing Squeeze live, which is one thing that I don't think any previous albums have done. That's not to say that I don't like the previous albums, but they've had a very distinct studio sound. Whereas this sound, on this album, for instance, I think Gilson's drum sound is tremendous, because he's a very flamboyant drummer. He's got a very big sound on his kit when we play live, and for the first time I think he's got that sound on an album as well.
Which track will illustrate that?
Onto the Dance Floor would do that excellently.
How long did it take to make the new album?
It was 6 weeks from start to finish.
Is that about average for you?
I don't think we have an average time. East Side Story took about 3.5 weeks, and then Argy Bargy, the one before that, took 3 months. So I suppose it's about exactly in the middle, which I suppose could be an average time, really.
Basically.
But for this album, what we wanted to do was to record a great selection of tracks. In fact, we ended up recording 18 and actually mixing and finishing them all, so we had a good selection for the album, so that everything would run together right, and that's what we did. It was quite exhausting working the last couple of weeks on the album. We found we were a bit short of time to mix, and we were ending up working until 10 or 11 in the morning.
So 18-hour day, basically.
But it was well worth it.
So now we've got like excess tracks, and we're hoping to release most of them, if not all of them, on a record to coincide with our British and European tour in September, which will be like a mini album.
What about your new album that's due out soon, Sweets from a Stranger? Does that have any or a lot of musical surprises on that?
I think there's quite a few
12
distinct changes. Yeah.
12 very good changes. You've got to spot them.
Which songs in particular would highlight a progression, if that's the word, then, for Squeeze?
I think one song that would be very obvious to pick out for a stylistic change for us would be When the Hangover Strikes, which is a blues-based song, but not blues in the tradition of, say, John Lee Hooker, but more white adaptation of blues in a ballad style, such as someone like Frank Sinatra or Julie London would attempt. And I think that's something that we haven't done before. On the other hand, I think there's a lot more dance-orientated music on the album. Tracks like I Can't Hold On are in a vein that we haven't attempted before.
Now, your songwriting partnership has been much written about, and what has the reaction been to the partnership in America, particularly?
It's been extremely positive, actually. We just got an award from Rolling Stone for being Songwriters of the Year, which was quite a nice surprise. And generally we seem to have been compared in both the American and British press as the new Lennon and McCartney, a comparison that I can't particularly see myself, because I don't think we're similar in any way to Lennon and McCartney, but it's a flattering comparison nevertheless.
We got very, very favourable reviews in the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times, which I'm very, very proud of. I never ever got a copy of them, but I'm very proud of it nonetheless. And I think they appreciate the group very, very much. I think in the same way they appreciated the Kinks when they went over there, because they're very successful in the States. And the comparisons with Lennon and McCartney extend from being compared to the Kinks in some form, because they're very British in their writing, I think, apart from the obvious soap opera album. I think, we sort of slot in line with their success, I guess.
So you would identify perhaps more with the writing of Ray Davies than Lennon McCartney?
Well, not me personally, but journalists of our time in the United States of America. And it's very enjoyable, I just can't wait to be knocked, really.
I think also in the States, possibly a reason why we've had such a lot of respect there lately is because we've actually worked hard at building up our audience there. The first time we went over there was about 3.5 years ago. We did a tour for 2 months, playing to anywhere between about 100 or 3 people in clubs, and to go over on such a grassroots level and work your way up to the point where now when we go back we're going to headline at Madison Square Gardens, I think has earned us quite a lot of respect.
We're going to America and playing college dates. This is the first American tour. We're going to be playing 2 weeks of college dates, and then we're going to be playing 2.5 weeks in Canada, and then we come home in May to do the British tour, and then we go back to America to play Madison Square Gardens, and we'll be coming to our European visitors, friends, in October for a full tour. This will be our first European tour. We've played Holland, which we like very, very much, but we've never really played anywhere else, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge in October to go over and find out exactly what songs everybody likes there.
What about on the new album? Is there a particular song or two that you can't wait to play on stage and that people will know it because they've heard it on the album?
Yeah, I get a tingle up my spine when we play songs like Black Coffee in Bed, which I think is going to be our new single here in Britain, and Onto the Dance Floor, which is a more modern song for Squeeze. It'll be more of a challenge, I think, to put it across correctly.
Is that something you like to do when you talk about some upbeat material on your new album, dance music? Is that what you like to do in your spare time?
Well, we haven't had much spare time the last couple of months, but before that I started visiting quite a few clubs and discos, and being quite surprised by how much I liked a lot of the disco music that was around. I've just discovered Earth, Wind and Fire for myself, and I think they're a terrific band, and a lot of the stuff that came out on ZE records like Kid Creole and the Coconuts and Was Not Was, it's excellent dance music, and I think that has had quite an effect musically on me.
I never go out to dance. I dance in my sleep, and that's quite enough for me.